Good evening and a very warm welcome to all of you from Ahmedabad International Literature Festival. We have reached to the stage where we have our own star team. I'm very proud and delighted to inform you all today that Nivid has been a star performer for Ahmedabad International Literature Festival from its inception. In fact, he is the man. When I find nobody, he is the go-to the man for me, for us, for all of the Ahmedabad International Literature Festival. Even today, the love poems was a challenge, and he accepted gleefully. So we are grateful to him. Wish him very bright future as well as the session coming ahead. We have Muskaan as well. She has been again a star performer for Ahmedabad International Literature Festival, and I have I have a very respected and lovely person whom I love a lot, I respect a lot, Mr. Abhay G, the ambassador to Madagascar. I've been following him for quite a long time. He has been kind enough to be in our show. This is the second time he is coming to Ahmedabad International Literature Festival. We are so grateful to him for his time and kindness shown to us always. Before we proceed, I'll just like to inform you that this show is available on AILF Facebook page, YouTube, as well as the Twitter handle, HM Lit Fest. All of you can share it on your pages, on your friends' pages, so that it can reach to maximum. You can keep posting your comments and questions on the comment box. We'll try to put it to our speakers, our lovely speakers, those who are there today. As a custom, we have a small video for us to show about what we have been doing in Ahmedabad International Literature Festival for 2 years, for 3 years, for 4 years, and this is the 5th edition we are doing. That is a digital one. So for last 3 editions, we'll be showing you a small video. Then we'll go ahead with the program.
Ahmedabad International Literature Festival, which aims to promote reading and writing, particularly in children and young adults, started with a bang in 2016. Mr. Umashankar Yadav, the founder-director of AILF and Icon Education Foundation, with his able and committed team, has taken the literary discourse of the city to a new height with 3 successful annual editions of the Literature Festival.
इस तरह के लिटरेचर फेस्टिवल के माध्यम से उसी इक्वल प्लेटफॉर्म और उतना ही ऑनर मिलना चाहिए, वो उन्नत समाज की निशानी होती है और ये बहुत पॉजिटिव साइन है.
આ પ્રક્રિયા છે તે જળ બિંદુમાંથી મોટી થવાની પ્રક્રિયા છે.
AILF जैसे पहल रखी गई है, ये बहुत जरूरी है.
AILF has gained widespread appreciation and popularity and has been applauded for its continuous and commendable work. Every time AILF proudly presents a collective diverse of distinguished speakers from the fields of literature, art, cinema, journalism, business, politics, academics and more, who shared their insightful opinions and compelling takes on a variety of subjects.
અહીંના નાગરિકોને આર્ટ, કલ્ચર, લિટરેચર આ તમામ બાબતોમાં પણ એક મંચ મળી રહે અને કલા અને સંસ્કૃતિને પણ પ્રોત્સાહન મળે.
સંસ્કૃતિ, આપણી કલા એ આજની નવી પેઢી સુધી પણ પહોંચે અને એ લોકો પણ આપણી આ જે સંસ્કૃતિ છે એને ગરિમાને જાળવી રાખે તેના પ્રયાસ રૂપે અમે આ ફેસ્ટિવલનું આયોજન કર્યું.
A host of other activities like book launches, authors' interactions with attendees, workshops, art and craft displays are also a huge draw for people. Various contests and awards make the festival even more fascinating and lively. Cultural events of the AILF with musical evenings and engaging literary discussions are promoting literary tourism to Ahmedabad, making the city an important literature destination in the country. Ahmedabad International Literature Festival resolves to continue serving literature lovers the best of everything that the world has to offer.
Speakers, audience, everybody, those who have joined from anywhere through any mediums. Before Muskaan and Nivid proceed with the session, This session is about the Bloomsbury Great Indian Love Poems, which anthology was edited by Abhay. We'd like to show a small video of that poem and post a poster of that one. As it is, anybody can buy it from Amazon. It is available. Now, Muskaan, you can please proceed with your introduction.
Right. Thank you so much, Umaji, for the wonderful introduction. And a very good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is staying good and most importantly, staying safe. I'm Muskaan Pathak. I am an art curator and primarily a student of finance and economics. I'm also the festival coordinator for Ahmedabad International Literature Festival and your anchor for today. Now, coming to today's session on the great Indian love poems, I'm pretty sure, as the name goes, and with the introduction that we just got, everyone watching must have gotten some idea on what we're going to be talking about today. So, I'm going to skip that brief and I'm just going to leave that for our speakers for the day. Coming up first, we have Mr. Abhay K, who is a diplomat and India's 21st ambassador to Madagascar. He is also an extremely acclaimed poet, writer, and editor with works like The Seduction of Delhi, The Alphabets of Latin America, The Great Indian Love Poems, and of course his first book, River Valley to Silicon Valley, which, if nothing less, is considered to be like a Bible for civil service aspirants today. He is also a recipient of the prestigious SARC Literary Award and the Asia Pacific Excellence Award, amongst many other accolades. Abhijit, it is such an honor to have you with us today, and we're so grateful for your time and your presence. Now, conversing with him, we have Nivid Desai, a dear friend of mine, who is a writer, researcher, and translator. He's the co-translator for the book Morning Mantra by R.J. Dwanit, which is a crossword bestseller, and he is also associated with Chitralekha as a writer. As a researcher, he has written, presented, and published his works at places like IIT Delhi, Symbiosis Pune, and Christ University, amongst others, and has also served as a visiting lecturer at Department of English, Gujarat University. With this, I now request Nivid to kindly take over and begin with the session.
Thank you, Muskaan. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. Thank you so much, Umaji, for your kind words. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on this lovely Sunday evening. Everyone who's watching us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter live streams, I welcome all of you on behalf of Ahmedabad International Literature Festival. I welcome all of you to this session on Great Indian Love Poems. Joining us today in conversation is none other than Mr. Abhay K, joining us all the way from Madagascar. Sir, thank you so much for joining us. It is an absolute honor and delight to be speaking with you today. And welcome once again to Ahmedabad International Literature Festival. On behalf of Team AILF, I would like to congratulate you, first of all, for the publication of your latest anthology, the Bloomsbury Book of Great Indian Love Poems. I have gone through the volume and I've immediately become an ardent fan of your editing and your curation and the kinds of poems that you've included in the volume. And it is an absolute delight to be talking with you about the volume today. So, to begin the conversation, in the volume, you have traced for more than 3,000 years of tradition of Indian love poetry. As we all know, Rig Ved, one of the earliest, probably the earliest text known to humanity, comes from our tradition, comes from India. And Rig Ved also has traces of love poetry in it, which Abhayji has included in the volume. So, sir, you've traced for more than 3,000 years of tradition as far as Indian love poetry is concerned. Uh, what were some interesting observations that came up while you were researching to select poems to be included in this volume?
First of all, thank you. Thanks to Mr. Uma Sankar for this opportunity again. You know, it's always a pleasure to have to be at Ahmedabad International Literature Festival, and with very friendly team which the festival has. Thank you, Muskaan, for introducing me so well, and very kind of you for to say all those words. And look forward to this beautiful session. Thank you, Nivid, for all these preparations and kind words about the anthology. See, I mean, I edit anthologies because I find that I need those books, and those books are not there. So it's precisely a very need-based endeavor. Because my philosophy comes from a fellow Gujarati, Mahatma Gandhi, that be the change you want to see in the world. And I try to be that change, and I try to bring that change, which I find that is needed. So when I was, this is a second book in this tradition where I thought that the focus of Indian poetry has to be shifted from poets to poems, and that's how I began in a very small and humble way by collecting 100 poems which can make an appeal to a young reader like both of you, to the next generation. I'm already 40, so I'm kind of getting old now. So so it's so it's an attempt to bring Indian poetry to the next generation, and not only to the next generation in India, but also next generation across the world. And it happened that it happened so that I mean, I was mostly when I was growing up as a child, I used to read poems in Hindi in Bihar, in Nalanda, and my father was a teacher, so we had lots of books at home, and I used to read them. So I had this, the smell, the fragrance of the soil, of the languages which we speak in India. So I also wanted to explore not only when I grew up and I started looking at poetry around, it was mostly poetry in English language, Indian English poetry, what we call. And so I wanted to also find poems from various Indian languages, from Gujarati, from Rajasthani, from Tamil, from Telugu, from Kannada. The languages, even if you may not have heard, like Kok Barok from Northeast, or from Missing, or from Dogri. So the first book which came out of these efforts, it took me about more than a year to put that, and reading various anthologies edited so far, and and the challenge was to how to present them in English translation, because sometimes when you translate these poems from the various vernacular languages, they lose their charm, they lose their strength. So it was a huge challenge for me, but also a very rewarding and exciting project. And so that the first book, 100 Great Indian Poems, came out in 2018. And since then it's been translated into over 6 global languages spoken in different continents, because I think there is no other such book. I have not come across a book of Indian poetry which has poems from 28 Indian languages spoken in different parts of India, translated into English, and then also, translated into Spanish and Portuguese and French and so on, Italian, Irish, Russian. So it was a true, quest to introduce to the world the beauty of Indian poetry, and not only contemporary Indian poetry, but also poetry ranging back from Rig Veda and from Upanishad and from till today. And during this course, I found that many of these poems in the 100 Great Indian Poems, and later 100 More Great Indian Poems, they were actually love poems, mostly from Sanskrit, but also from Prakrit and from Old Tamil, and so on. So see, we have to, so this book is also a journey which takes you to the history of our languages and evolution of our languages, because first of all it was Sanskrit, then Sanskrit became Prakrit, it evolved into Prakrit, and Prakrit we have also evolved by the 11th 12th century AD. It became several languages, Uriya and Punjabi and Rajasthani and so on. It broke into several various Indian languages we know today. So this volume is also a sort of journey into that, and now coming to your question, this was to introduce that, how did it all happen, and so now coming to your question of the Rig Veda, starting with the Rig Veda. So see, Indian philosophy gives equal importance to artha, which is economic pursuits, dharma, which is right conduct, and kama, which is the sensory pleasure, and these are the 3 pillars on which the balance, if you can achieve the balance between the 3, you can automatically achieve moksha. And so whenever we talk about love, the philosophy of the Indian philosophy of kama always, enjoyment always comes into play. And Kama Sutra, which is written by Vatsayana, also defines kama as enjoyment of appropriate objects by the 5 senses of hearing, feeling, seeing, tasting, and smelling, assisted by the mind together with the soul. And those who pursue artha, kama, and dharma in balance, they understand the meaning of life. So this anthology is also about sensitizing or making younger generation aware of the importance of balance, because see, today what happens, like most of us or the younger generation is busy looking for a job. First you have to study, and then you get a job, and then you marry and have children, and then life is over. So this is very, of course, very simplistic way to put it, but to understand in our life, to understand the importance of the balance between the pursuit of money. For example, some people are just when you say that when you are young and somebody asks you that when are you getting married, so the answer is that first I have to become economically independent, and then get a house and settle down, and then I'll think of marriage. This is also what is told to many girls, that first become independent and then think of marriage. So now we have to reflect upon this, because when we say that hold on, and wait to become economically independent before you can start following the pursuits of pleasure, and so on. So I think it needs rethinking, because what I think is that a balance is needed. We all need a balance among these three. And also, like when you say that I need to have a career, I need to have a other things are not as important. If I can get a job, other things don't matter, because I have a job. But there is always a cost to that, because you are destroying that balance, and in pursuit of career, many people forget about that. You need to have a balance to have self-actualization. If someone of you among you has read Maslow's theory of self-actualization in psychology, that there are steps, and the top step you reach is self-actualization. So for that, I think, and it is important to understand this balance. So now coming to Rig Veda, that how, even, the Indian love poetry, which is known as Shringara Ras, and there are 9 kind of rasas, or flavors in Indian literature and poetry. So Shringara Ras is one of the most important flavors or rasas. And even Shringara Ras is of 3 kinds. It's divided into 3 kind of Shringara. The one is it's called unequal Ayoga Shringara, which is like unequal love, when there are 2 people who are involved who are not equal. There is a second one which is called Vipralamba, which is the love of separation, and the third one is Sambhoga Shringar, which means that the erotic love. So these, the poems in this anthology, they have all kind of poems. They focus on all the 3 kinds of Shringar Rasa. And Indian love poetry has a great tradition of which goes over 1,000 years. So for example, in Rig Veda, there are sections which talks about a dialogue between Indra and Indrani, and also there is one more character called Brasakapi, who is sort of a rival to Indra, and so there is Indrani talks about herself. She's talking to herself, and but addressing it to Indra, and it says, "No woman would have rounder hips than me, or would be more skilled in the art of love making, or pressing tighter, or thirsting her thighs higher. Indra, the greatest of all." Indra says to Indrani, "O beauty with slender arms and graceful fingers, with luxuriant hair and wide hips, what? Will you hurt our Brishakapi? Indra, the greatest of all." Are you there?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So, then coming to the Upanishad, one of the most ancient texts, Brihadaranya Upanishad, talks about on this theme, that how philosophy is involved in this. So it says, "You are nothing but your deep desire, driving your will, your deeds, and your deeds, your destiny." Which is very profound, because everything, as we know, that everything in the Indian philosophy, it says that it emanates from your mind, your thoughts, and so you have to be aware of what you think, because what you think, or what you want, deeply, what you desire deeply, affects your actions, affects what you do, and what you do becomes, is your destiny, your actions. So it's very important, and it all, even and it's not this whole desire, is also the basis of all the suffering. In Buddhist philosophy, the four noble truths, the first truth is that there is a suffering in this world, and the second truth says that the cause of all the suffering is desire, and so it's so Rig Veda, Upanishad, and even the Buddhist philosophy, the desire is central to our existence, to our destiny. And so I think, there's a long tradition of dealing with this desire. How to deal with it, determines a lot of things in our lives.
That's a pretty profound answer, sir, because there is so much to extract as far as our ancient texts are concerned. You can go through each and every verse that they offer, and there are multitudes to extract from every single one of them. As far as this point about desire is concerned, I also found it quite compelling to note that we always express this desire through different means of images and through different means of metaphor, because those are the areas where we truly become creative while approaching poetry. And be it any Indian language, we always resort to the metaphors and the images that are native to our cultural existence as a society. So I want to know from you, in your entire research, in your entire exploration of all these different Indian languages across time, across poets, across traditions, uh, what are some interesting images or what are some interesting metaphors of love that you find? For example, one of my favorite metaphors and a timeless metaphor for love has been the moon. The moon has been compared over and over to the beloved. Even in some of my most favorite Hindi and Urdu poetry, be it तेरा चेहरा कितना सुहाना लगता है, तेरे आगे चांद पुराना लगता है, और इब्ने इंशाज गजल, कल 14वीं की रात थी, शब भर रहा चर्चा तेरा, कुछ ने कहा वो चांद है, कुछ ने कहा चेहरा तेरा. So, excuse me, sir, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. I want to know from you, what are some interesting images or what are some consistent metaphors that are native to the Indian tradition of poetry?
I think these metaphors are always there. For example, I was fascinated by Kalidas and his use of because in his two poems, both are actually, I mean, one is a love poem called Meghdut, which is the cloud messenger, and another one is about nature, which is six seasons, but also it's a kind of love poems to the seasons and the beauty of the changing season across the year. So the images which Kalidas uses, they are he derives those images from the nature. Of course, moon is always present there, but then also he he makes the clouds a person, and talks to the cloud, and the cloud has his own lover and wife, the lightning. I mean, did you know about this? But in Meghdut, the lightning is the wife of the cloud, and then he always tells the cloud that there are rivers on the way. I mean, when you go from the central India to the Himalayas, taking his Yaksha's message to his beloved, to his wife, so do take interest in the rivers. And he describes rivers as sensual beings, and he asks the cloud to drink from them, and so rivers themselves become sensuous creatures, and all these different kind of plants and flowers. I mean, he mentions, I remember, 26 kind of different plants, and each one of them with a has a character, has a so these images of making the nature as personifying them and using them as metaphors for example, mangoes, or jasmine, or even the bright hills, so he sort of animates them. He makes them like us, living things who are talking to each other. So I think and in Ritu Samhar, which is the a gathering of seasons, he uses the metaphors of different perfumes and different food, like like pan, betel nut, and he uses these different kind of resins which are derived from plants, and so on. So best would be to read some some of these from the Kalidas, so that you can get how does he use. For example, also like Vatsyayana in the Kama Sutra, he uses nail marks and love bites, as metaphors. So this is from Ritu Samhar. Summer. The palace terraces fragrant with flowers, and wine quivering beneath the breath and lips of their ladies. and sweet songs, accompanied with lutes and lyres, kindle luminous love of amorous men at midnight, summer, my love. Round hips, their beauty augmented with soft silk, and the jeweled belts, their sandal-pasted bosoms shining with strings of pearls, hair fragrant with subtle and lingering perfumes. Women soothe the senses of their lovers. With these, in the scorching summer, I love. Women's feet colored with lakcha juice, their tinkling anklets mimic the sonorous sound of the crying hamsas at every step, stirring desire in the hearts of young men. Breasts painted with sandal paste, adorned with snow-white pearl strings, and hips moving with golden girdles. Who can remain indifferent to these and not be filled with restless longing? In the for example, to bring you to the modern day, here's a poem called Tonight, This Savage Right by Pratish Nandi. And see what he says. Tonight, I surrender to the closing of wings. The dark shall testify to this tremulous rhyme. Whenever you move under me, my body celebrates this beautiful ceremony. Within my hands, your small breasts move into the twilight. Yes, we have loved like the wind that swirls into the seasons. Your breasts contend against my proud absence, shipwrecked into expectancy as your tongue turns hunter tonight. Taking you back to the another poem by a modern poet, Tishani Doshi. It's called Love Poem. Ultimately, we will lose each other to something. I would hope for grand circumstance, death or disaster. But it might not be that way at all. It might be that you walk out one morning after making love to buy cigarettes and never return. Or I fall in love with another man. It might be a slow drift into indifference. Either way, we will have to learn to bear the weight of the eventuality that we will lose each other to something. So why not begin now while your head rests like a perfect moon in my lap and the dogs on the beach are howling? Why not reach for the seam in this South Indian night and tear it just a little so the falling can begin? Because later when we cross each other on the streets and are forced to look away, when we are thrown the disregarded pieces of our togetherness into bedroom drawers, and the smell of our bodies is disappearing like the sweet decay of lilies. What will we call it when it's no longer love? So you can see the moon always comes in some form or the other. And here is a poem by Suniti Nam Joshi. It's called I Give Her the Rose. I give her the rose with unfurled petals. She smiles and crosses her legs. I give her the shell with the swollen lip. She laughs. I bite and nudgle her breasts. I tell her, feed me on flowers with wide open mouths, and slowly she pulls down my head. So so all these there are different images here. Here is a poem called Moon Rising. Moon rising over the horizon, a longing rising in my heart to see the moon and you through the night without blinking, to follow the moon and your body until it sets and you rise.
So it is such an honor to hear that poem from the poet himself. The Moon Rising is written by none other than Abhay Ji himself, and I mentioned it to him earlier today. What a beautiful poem that is! It captures so much of the gravity and the depth of love in such short and carefully chosen words. So I would like to know, since this is a curation of a variety of languages, of a variety of traditions. Every language comes with some characteristics of its own. Uh, for example, meters or rhythms, or purely even from the phonetic point of view, there is a lot of variety as far as how every Indian language sounds. Uh, when you're translating all these poems with different sorts of meters, different sorts of rhythm, and different complexities of phonetics, what things must one keep in mind while translating poetry from a stylistic point of view, from a formalist point of view, and from a poetic point of view? Because one must balance all of that, right? One must keep in mind the cadence of poetry, how it sounds, and also whether the poetics does justice to the source language in the first place. So, what are some of your thoughts? What are some of your experiences while translating poetry yourself and editing poetry which has been translated by other translators?
So I think it is said that translators are the are the one who create the world literature, and have translators have a very important role to play in making literature of from one place or one language available in another one. So this anthology is, of course, an anthology of translations, because I can't read Tamil or Telugu or Kok Baroque. So so thanks to translators that I am able to read them and relish or cherish the beauty of these poems in English, which is such a blessing. So now I think every translation, it is said that everything should be retranslated after 20 years. Because what is translation? Translation is to make the sense, the rhythm, the beauty of one language available in another one, in which the person, the reader, can understand it, can feel it. So some people say that lost in translation. They use the word that the poetry can't be translated because things get lost in translation. Some say that gained in something gains in translation. So but we have to have a fundamental thing that translation is essential. Whether there's a loss or gain, that's secondary. But literature has to be translated to be made available to readers in different languages. So the first thing we must agree is that translation is essential. Now, about gain and loss, there are certain poems which gain, there are certain poems which lose, but it depends on the reader and depends on the who is reading it and who is saying it. Because it's always subjective. And therefore, the important thing is that a translation must be contemporary, in the sense, if you're translating a text from Rig Veda, and if you are translating in English, which was spoken in 18th century, it won't make sense today, So one of the, I have done translations from Sanskrit myself, and from various Indian languages like, Braj Bhasa mm, and Hindi and so on, Urdu. So the point is that I have to, when I am translating, I have to keep in mind that what language the next generation speaks, and will it be accessible to them? So I think this is a very fundamental thing, fundamental element of translation. Now, keeping, for example, some poems in Sanskrit, for example, does not have rhyming structure, so all the beauty is in the slow movement of the line, or fast movement of the line, depending on, and languages do not share syntax structures, like the sequence means the subject, object, verb, or subject, verb, object, so it cannot be a standard translation, that if you're translating from Hindi to Russian, it's different than you're translating from Hindi to English, or from even from Tamil to another language. So I would leave at that. I think that the most important thing, that translation should be accessible, it should be enjoyable, it should be, it should convey the feelings. I don't think any translation can be 100% true. It's not possible. But if it does the job of conveying the beauty of one language into another, I think a job is, its translation is done well.
Okay, those are some really interesting ideas to ponder upon, because I read somewhere that as far as Kalidas's plays are concerned, translating them into archaic English would not be appropriate, in fact, because Kalidas actually wrote in very conversative Sanskrit. So if one is to translate Kalidas's plays or poetry into English, one has to write in conversative English, because that way you are actually staying more true to Kalidas's version of Sanskrit and the kind of vocabulary that he uses in native Sanskrit. Abhayji, as far as the multitude of languages in India are concerned, do you see any major similarities or differences as far as the approach to love is concerned between one language and another language? So does a Gujarati love differently from a Bengali? That's the and how is and how is that reflected, if at all? How is that reflected in the poetry that emerges from that tradition?
So, the best thing would be to read the different poems. For example, let me read a poem, a Gujarati poem. Translated into English. It's a poem called "Woman" by Sitansu Yasas Chandra. I don't know if you know him, but he's a well-known Gujarati poet.
Yeah.
So it's a poem called "Woman." Like rich black loam, this woman is spread all around me, so far as I can feel, and I, like flash flood waters, warm, seep into her layers, and she is nourished. She drains me in mouthfuls and devours me with sharp teeth, turning me into seeds to plant. Even when I feel that she is mine, my wealth, my possession, through her free will, She is, of course, being artful about this, or perhaps helpless, or spellbinding. Her body of soft clay is magical, and eyes of monsoon skies. She is simple, though she is spontaneous, I know. When I kiss her, she turns into an aroma. I hold her. She flows away like waters. In my embrace, she spills over, or in both her eyes. I can never predict which. She would not know either. This woman knows more about me than she knows about herself. Like a tall cliff of soft earth, she collapses in an instant into a mold and buries me deep into herself. She preserves me from death in a bezueled locket between her breasts. She's just a slip of a girl, a virgin really. I crush her breasts, twist her waist, fling her thighs sky high, and completely subdue her. But then, in a briefest moment, she anew challenges me gleefully with a scorn, turning herself into a maid of utter innocence. No lover she has like me, and I no enemy like her. This is translated from Gujarati by Sitansu Yasas Chandra. It's his poem, and I want to read you a poem from another language, which is from Telugu. Move on Her Lips by Mudhu Palani. I think she wrote these poems a few centuries ago. Yeah. But move on her lips, the tip of your tongue. Do not scare her by biting hard. Place on her cheeks a gentle kiss. Do not scratch her with your sharp nails. Hold her nipple with your fingertips. Do not scare her by squeezing it tight. Make love gradually. Do not scare her by being aggressive. I am a fool to tell you all this. When you meet her and wage your war of love, would you care to recall my do's and don'ts, honey? This is by Mudhu Palani, which is about Krishna and Radha telling this to Krishna. So I mean, there are different. You can. I'll leave the readers to draw their own conclusions. But different languages. For example, here's a poem by Vidyapati from Mathili. For heaven's sake, listen, oh my darling. For heaven's sake, listen, oh my darling. Do not dart your cruel, angry glances at me. For I swear by the lovely pictures of your breasts and by your golden, glittering snake-like necklace, if ever on earth I dare touch anyone except you, let your necklace turn into a real snake and bite me. And if ever my promise and words prove false, chastise me, oh darling, in the way you want to. But now don't hesitate to take me in your arms. Bind my thirsty body with yours. Bruise me with your thighs and bite me with your teeth. Let your fingernails dig deep into my skin. Strangle me for heaven's sake with your breasts and lock me in the prison of your body forever. So you can see, I mean, there is this poem by Amir Khusro called The Yellow Mustard from Persian. The yellow mustard is blooming in every field. Mango buds are clicking open, other flowers too. The quail chirps from branch to branch, and the maiden tries her makeup. The gardener girls have brought bouquets, colorful flowers of all kinds. In hands, everyone is bringing. But Ashik Rang, who had promised to come to Nizamuddin's house in spring, hasn't turned up. It's been years. The yellow mustard is blooming in every field. The beauty of yellow mustard, you can see. So different, I mean, it's like there's not one way to, say that Gujarati poetry is like this, or, Bengali poetry is like that, or Oriya poetry is like that. I think, there are different kind of poets, and there is an Indian sensibility in these poems.
Certainly. One of my favorite poems that you have curated is from Sanskrit. Again, it is by Dharmakirti. Every month, the moon attempts to capture the beauty of your face, and having miserably failed, erases the work to start afresh. So much cadence and so much beauty packed within these.
In short,
In 2 lines, it conveys so much of depth as far as the beauty of love is concerned. Abhayji, last question. As a poet and as an editor who works with contemporary poets in India, where do you see Indian poetry heading towards in all languages and in English as well? What do you see happening?
We have a very fascinating time for poetry now, because more poetry is being written today thanks to social media, like different social media apps like Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, because it's easy to share, and more poetry is also being published today than before. Poetry has had a reawakening, not only in India but also across the world, and poetry has started selling well. So as I said in the beginning, that I always try to lead by example. So I have been editing and publishing poetry since a number of years now, and all these books I have done, they have sold well, so even my own poetry collections. Poetry is becoming, people are buying poetry, and even if it sells 500 copies or 1,000 copies maximum, poetry bestseller is 1,000 copies. So but still, I think recently there are, like, all the major publishers in India have brought poetry anthologies. Penguin has brought one. Bloomsbury, you have seen. HarperCollins has also brought a poetry anthology. And then there are several small publishers dedicated to poetry, like Poetry Wala in Mumbai, Hawakkal Prakashan in I think Kolkata, and a number of them, I think, all across India. So a lot of poetry is being published, and I think the young people, they should write poetry, even if the idea of writing poetry is not to become a famous poet, but it is, the basic thing is to express yourself, first thing, and second thing is to connect with the fellow human beings. And I think anybody who writes poetry, good poetry in the sense that is able to communicate better, because poets are generally sensitive people. They they have a way with the words, and they imagine the world in a new way. These days I'm busy writing anthems for all the planets in our solar system, and I'm trying to, imagine them in a different way. So I see, like, for example, I see Jupiter as a cosmic break dancer, because it moves at a different rate, different parts of the body. So, how do you imagine that? I see Neptune as a, cosmic, a celestial doorkeeper, or as a bouncer, who doesn't allow you to the club, it sort of pushes away dwarf planets, So, I'm trying to bring them, to give them. So what a metaphor does, it exactly does this. It tries to imagine the world in a new way, and but using the old images. So it brings you an understanding of the new things, with a with the existing framework of symbols.
Abhayji, I had asked you earlier also, and now as well. Are you going to stick to the poetry itself? Because you have been the great ambassador of poetry. I have never seen any creative person who is pushing poetry so hard. People write poetry, but you have been pushing poetry so hard. So, are you going to change sometimes in the near future, or maybe at the later time, to some other genre beyond poetry?
Muskaan has read my book, the first book, and I think that's that was a memoir. And then I wrote another memoir which has not come out in English language yet. It's about my journey into the art world, because I also started painting, and I'm also an artist. So
wow.
I tried these different things. Who knows? I have done recently translations, which I had not imagined myself, but thanks to the time little bit of time I got during the lockdown, I used this to read Meghdoot and Ritu Samhar and translate these two into English, contemporary English. But poetry is something which has found me, and I have found poetry. So poetry it's immense. The possibilities are immense, and poetry has this ability to say things you can say the same things in 2 lines. So why to write a 100-page novel to say those things? So I think as one of the greatest poets, Octavio Paz, who is also a poet diplomat, an ambassador of Mexico to India also, and a Nobel laureate, he says that poetry is a syncretic art, which brings different elements and combines into one, and it sort of fuses everything. While prose is a sort of a descriptive art. You sort of pull everything apart and describe them differently, and then try to connect them. So poetry has its own. Poetry is not only in the poems we write, but it's also in I remember so many mantras like Gayatri mantra, or Hanuman Chalisa. These are all, or the film songs. Poetry is in the jingles, in the advertisements you hear. So poetry is there in the language itself. It's inbuilt, and we very unconsciously use it every day, but we don't know it. When you are born and when you die, it all begins with poetry and ends with poetry, because all the mantras, these are all poems.
And thanks to poets like you, who are the great ambassador of poetry as well, I would say. Because, as you said, people remember it day in, day out, night, everywhere. But still, when it comes to giving respect to the genre, to the poets, it becomes something like it's a very simple thing. Anybody can write it. So the kind of respect, the kind of seriousness being given to poets, particularly by the readers as well as the publishers, has been very less. We should all give full credit to people like you, who have been pushing hard towards poetry, and Bloomsbury India, they have been publishing it, people have been buying it. Otherwise, poets are struggling to to sell the books, and they are the publishers, they don't publish it. So it's a full credit to you, and
That is right. It's hard for poets to get published, and poetry is always at the margins, in literature. So poetry is like it's in the corner always. But then, even being in the corner, it has its own power. It does not need a publisher, because you can write one poem in your whole lifetime, and that's sufficient. Because you don't need a whole book of poems to get published. So poets, I think poets, all those poets who are listening today, you should remember that your life as a poet is successful even if you can write one single memorable poem which could be remembered. So that's the challenge, and you don't need a publisher for that.
On a lighter and personal note, can you just recite a poem of any language which has changed your life or has affected your life?
So poetry played a role in me becoming a diplomat, because in the essay, we had essay in the civil services exam, and that essay I started with the Tagore's poem, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high.
Wow.
So this poem has always stayed with me, and also the poem of Ramdhari Singh Dinkar, which I read as a child, when I was in class 4, from Rasmi Rathi, his book Rasmi Rathi Tirtiya Sarg. हो गया पूर्ण अज्ञातवास, पांडव लौटे वन से साहस, सौभाग्य में सब दिन सोता है, देखें आगे क्या होता है. And see there, it's a book where both poetry and diplomacy came together. So पांडवों का संदेशा लेकर Shri Krishna, he goes to the court of the Pandavas, court of the Kauravas, Dhritarashtra, taking the message of Krishna says, दो न्याय अगर तो आधा दो, अगर उसमें भी कुछ बाधा हो, दे दो केवल 5 ग्राम, रखो अपनी धरती तमाम, हम उसी में खुशी से खाएंगे, परिजन पर असी न उठाएंगे. दुर्योधन वो भी दे न सका, आशीष समाज की ले न सका, उल्टे हरि को बांधने चला, जो था असाध्य साधने चला. हरि ने भीषण हुंकार किया, अपना स्वरूप विस्तार किया, डगमग डगमग दिग्गज डोले, भगवान कुपित होकर बोले, हाँ हाँ दुर्योधन बांध मुझे, हाँ हाँ दुर्योधन बांध मुझे. यह देख गगन मुझ में लय है, यह देख पवन मुझ में लय है, सब जन्म मुझी से पाते हैं, सब जन्म सब लौट फिर मुझी में आते हैं. So this is this is one part of the where you have poetry and you have diplomacy, and then this thing ends, and then Shri Krishna, he goes out of that court, and then he takes Karna along with him, and he takes Karn along with him, and he tells Karn that you are a Kunti Putra, you are one of the Pandavas, so why should you fight with the Kauravas? And that's where diplomacy, this whole de do keval 5 gram, this whole gesture of making concessions and peace and negotiations, it's there. So that's how you have this beautiful text which I remember. I also remember lots of sloka, from Sanskrit texts I studied, and those have always stayed with me. Sarve Sarve santu niramaya, sarve
Sarve bhavanti sukhna.
सर्वे सर्वे सुखिनः भवन्ति सर्वे सर्वे भवन्ति सर्वे सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्।
यस। अच्छा, इसी बात पे अभय जी आपसे आपकी बहुत सारे बातें हम पूरी रात बातें कर सकते हैं, पर मुझे विद परमिशन फ्रॉम Nivid, of course.
Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, two small questions. One is, you write almost every day 2-3 quotes in your Twitter and other places. So beautiful. You write 1 or 2, and sometimes these are really life-changing kind of experiences. One day I remember you, and from where you get, I mean, when you try to search it, you try to just synchronize with your personality, which you think that this is right for the society, right for me, and I just be. I am part of it. Probably you are writing it, it seems. So one is this: what keeps you motivated? Are you still probably being a more? A question is going to be a little longer. Being diplomat, particularly, keeps you idealistic. Most of the diplomats, are they living an ideal life? And they always live a kind of life which is little away from the reality, in imagination, in kind of diplomacy, of course. So away from reality, iconic life, idealistic life. One is this. The other one is, do you think the kind of people like you in diplomacy, of course, a lot of diplomats write, but do the creative diplomats make a better diplomat?
So first question, the quotes, those are those quotes, I really need them to keep myself motivated, because everything I do is for first myself and then for others, So
I remember one a few days back you wrote. I read almost all. That was people have less present and more future. It sounds so good, right? I mean, in today's life, I have less present, more future. I mean, more worried about future, less about present. So these are such wonderful quotes.
Beautiful. So see, I mean, as I started this talk, we started this talk that, we are nothing but our thoughts, and our deep desires. So the secret of life is that, we become what we desire, or we become what we think, and or we become what we imagine, So it's very important what you are thinking at the moment. So what I have done that, I have put together a list of these thoughts, because quotes are nothing but thoughts, they're crisp thoughts from great people who have lived this life and have had experience, and it would be foolish not to benefit from their experience, so I have put together a list of quotes for every day, for myself, that for all the 365 days,
and you must be creating yours by your own also, probably.
Yes. So I mean, that is for the others to create, but I mean, I use the quotes of the others who have people who are wiser than me, who have been here before, and to benefit from their good thoughts. So I mean, I would like to publish someday, a book of wisdom, because I think that these thoughts are, as you very rightly said, they're life-changing. Because the example I can give you is that so if you are interacting with someone without reading the quote, and how you react to that situation, and if you read a quote which is profound, it changes the way you react to the same situation, because it sort of affects your mind. And I mean, for example, yesterday was the birthday of Albert Camus, the Nobel laureate, and he said that in this invincible winter, I found in this long winter, I found an invincible summer within me, So it's like it motivates you, it motivates you to find that invincible summer within you, and to be not be scared, not to fear, the daily challenges. So I think that everybody should have a book of quotes, or curate a book of favorite quotes for the whole year, and read it very carefully every day. It can be on your mobile phone, or for example, as I said, I quoted Gandhi, that be the change you want to see in the world. How important it is, when you are dealing with plastic pollution, when you go to the shop and you take a polythene bag and come back home, so it's not the change. You are not being the change. So I think it affects you, it affects your actions. For example, we turned our embassy here into a solar embassy, and this was inspired from Gandhiji, that, if I am telling others to go solar, first I have to go solar, right? And so on. So it's important.
So,
Second question was about are diplomats better? Are poets
and
better diplomats?
creative diplomats are better than the other.
Yeah. So I have done my own introspection, and I have found that poetry helps me to become a better diplomat, being a poet, because poets and diplomats, they share a few things, and the first is the brevity, of expression. So saying more things in less. So a diplomat does not speak much, so does a poet. You say whole thing in a short poem, like
That I'm learning from
poem. Yeah. Second thing is of sensitivity, because both, you cannot be a good poet or a good diplomat until you are sensitive, because poetry is a bridge profession. It's not only taking care of your own national interest, because people think that, but you also have to take care of the interest of the others. So if you have this sensitivity towards others, you can have better negotiations. As somebody says, that try to put yourself in someone else's shoes. So try to put yourself in, I should try to put myself in your place and see that how does it feel. So if you do that, you are able to better understand your negotiator, and I think it helps you in negotiations to understand the views of the others.
No, it's very rightly said. Yes, I many times, I'm sorry to come in between. I many times I think when I'm in the kind of tricky situation, I think once suppose Abhayji has been in my situation, how he would have dealt with this kind of situation, because you're very calm, speak with few things, and just diplomacy. Of course, we say you are talking diplomatically. So that is how I try to understand. Like if he has been in my position, how he would have reacted. So that helps, in fact. Let somebody you be in somebody else's shoes and see how he has been, how he would react. Then probably you can correct yourself, and you can take right decision at right time, and that can save a lot of things destroying some. So we can.
And then the third thing is that you both as a poet and diplomat, you tell it, but you tell it slant, in the sense that you tell it through metaphors or through so that there's no like a direct speech, in the sense that it's not very, very blunt. It's slant, not blunt. So I think these are some of the common traits, which both poets and diplomats, they deal with words every day. So you have to at least very carefully choose your words, what you say and how you say it. I think it's both. Being a poet teaches you that, and being a diplomat also, as a diplomat, I'm able to form deep connections with people through poetry, because whichever countries I have served in, for example, Russia or Nepal or Brazil or Madagascar, I have I still have friends there who write to me. They remember the poetry and the art work we did together. So you form lasting bonds through poetry. I don't think as a diplomat alone you can have a transactional bond, but you cannot have deeply soulful bonds with people. So I think being a poet also helps you to have these long-lasting bonds. So I think creative people, this is a very little known literary trivia, but there are 8 poet diplomats, or diplomats who were poets, or poets who were diplomats, have won the Nobel Prize for Literature. Gabriela Mistral, Pablo Neruda, George Seferis, Octavio Paz, John Saint Perse, Ceslo Milos, So,
we
so
wish
I'm
your
sure
name
that,
comes at the 9th place someday.
No, I'm not talking about myself, but I'm trying to say that there is some deep connection between poetry and diplomacy, because it would not be possible without that, to achieve the highest place in the world of literature.
We are really short of time, and Nivid, thank you very much for your patience. On the last point, very small answer, Abhayji. What, because this has been a session on love, what love means to you?
I think love means, it means tenderness. It means, I think sensitivity, and it means joy. It means delight. I mean, because when you feel love, I mean, it's either you think about your mother or your friend or your partner or your beloved. It's or your father. I mean, love is like all pervasive. And it's sort of, I would say that it's a nourishment. It's sort of, I don't think we can exist without love.
Yeah, please keep writing those quotes on Twitter, on Facebook, and other things. These are really inspiring millions, and people keep reading, keep changing their ways, their lives. Over to you, Nivid, finally. Sorry.
Thank you so much, Abhay sir, for joining us all the way from Madagascar and sharing your insights with us on this lovely Sunday evening. Thank you so much, everyone who's been joining us from all the live streams that we've been doing on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitter. Once again, I would like to remind the audience members that the Bloomsbury Book of Great Indian Love Poems is available on all online retail stores and the retail stores around you. So go to a bookstore, go to an online retail store, and grab your copy. I've become an ardent fan of the anthology in the past 2 days that I've read it, and I'm pretty sure that you will extract your new meanings of love from it as well. Due credit and absolute joy and congratulations to Abhay sir once again for having compiled such a beautiful volume of love poetry and making us proud of a 3,000-year-long tradition that we have harbored in our Indian culture. So Abhayji, thank you so much once again for gifting us with such a beautiful edition, and maybe keep cherishing your poetry for decades to come. And maybe keep learning from our own tradition of poetry for as far as we can. Muskaan, over to you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Nivid. It was a pleasure to talk to you. And
thank you so
much. Thank you for having me again. And I'm sure that everybody in Ahmedabad buys the book now, and reads
Great Indian Love
Poems of Indian poetry. Thank you. Thank you, Muskaan.
Thank you so much, Abhay for joining us. Thank you so much, Nivid. And Uma Shankarji, of course. This was an absolute delight.
Yeah, thank you,
our audience, for being with us today. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful evening and night ahead. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
Last, I would again like to thank you, Abhayji, and Nivid, of course, to you, because you read it in a very short span of time. In 3 days, he completed the book and the earlier one, and he was ready with all the questions and probable answers from the Abhayji. Thank you very much once again to all the viewers. This is available on YouTube, Facebook. You can always watch in your leisure time the entire session. It has been very enlightening session from Abhayji and Nivid, of course, Muskaan. Thank you very much once again, everybody.
Thank you so much. Good night, everyone. Good night, Abhay sir. Good night, Umaji. Good night, Muskaan. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.